I am making an updated version of my Tomb Keeper deck. It's mostly similar to my last one I did a couple days ago, but I changed a few things, and this version actually went 2-1 at my locals, where I won against Fluunderies, mainly because I won the die roll and they just couldn't do anything because they just couldn't have hand traps when I could do things. And then round 2, I played against Kashtira, which I lost against mainly because I had forgotten an effect. I'll go over what that was when I get to it. And then I won against Malice, and then that was just because of time rules, because they have to pay life points every time they summon back. But one thing I will say is that this version of the deck, including the side deck, has 27 hand traps in it, which the hand traps will go over last. Starting off with the monsters, I play 3 copies of Man with the Mark. See if I can get these centered. Man with the Mark is kind of the most important monster of the deck, where as long as it's in play, your Temple of the Kings itself and your Apophis cards can't be destroyed by battle or card effect. And then when you summon, you can add a spell or trap mentioning Temple of the Kings from your deck to your hand. That's on normal or special. Then next, I play 2 copies of, let's see, can I remember this thing? Merciless Scorpion of Circuit. You only really need to play 1 of this, but I personally like 2. But it can only be summoned from your hand by banishing a level 10 or higher monster from your deck, and then you can only summon it while you have Temple of the Kings in play. But when it's summoned, it then lets you add a spell from your deck that mentions Temple of the Kings. And then at the start of the damage step, if it battles a monster, you can destroy that monster, and if you do, then Circuit gains half its original attack. Next, I play 3 copies of Anubis the Last Judge. Anubis the Last Judge has the effect that you can send it from your hand to the graveyard to then add the Man with the Mark from your deck to your hand. And then you can special summon it from your hand or graveyard as long as you have any combination of 3 traps or cards that mention Temple of the Kings. You put 2 of them at the bottom of your deck in any order, and then you can summon itself. And then its final effect, I believe your opponent has to trigger it. Let's see. Now, if a spell or trap you control is destroyed by card effect, then you can target 1 card of the field and destroy it. That last part doesn't really usually come up, but it does let you recycle your Temple of the King cards, or your traps even, such as Infinite Impermanence. Or my favorite trap, which I don't remember if it mentions Temple of the Kings or not. I'll find out when I get to it later. But it just lets you recycle things, so that's why I like it at 3. And then going on to the spells, I play 1 copy of Defense of the Temple. Defense of the Temple just lets you fusion summon, and if you're using a monster you control as material, you can also use one of your opponent's monsters. Which, if you're doing that, it's either because you're in a mirror match, or you're going to summon Apophis the Divine Serpent, or Divine Serpent Apophis, I mean. Or, in most cases, you're going to be summoning the Circuit Fusion by using the Merciless Scorpion of Circuit that you control, which can technically add Defense of the Temple. And I think, make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, yeah, I didn't. Wrong thing. And then next I play 1 copy of Temple of the Kings. Temple of the Kings, with this deck, just lets you activate traps at the same turn, or 1 trap at the same turn set per turn. And then lastly, for the 1-of spells, I play 1 copy of Terraforming. This just lets you add 1 of 3 copies of Treasures of the Kings to your hand. Speaking of, I play 3 copies of Treasures of the Kings. Treasures of the Kings has the effect when it's activated, you can set an Apophis trap from your deck. And then once per turn, if you have 2 or more spells or traps on the field, then you can add a monster that mentions Temple of the Kings from your deck to your hand. Now, the misplay I had is I had a decent hand against Kashtira, but I forgot about Treasures of the Kings just letting you add once per turn, and I didn't realize it. I didn't remember it had that effect until after I ended my turn. But in my defense, I was playing against one of my friends who is very notorious for going to time, and we were getting close to time already, so I was trying to fast play and forgot about that effect. If I had remembered, I actually would have won. And you can only use the search effect of Treasures of the Kings once per turn. And I believe you can also only activate. You can only activate one Treasures of the Kings per turn. Now for the traps, I play one copy of Statue of English Pattern. Statue of English Pattern, I'm actually going to pull it in the middle, has the effect that you can activate as a trap monster. I believe it's a level 7 Earth Rock. Yeah, it's an Earth Rock monster that's level 7 with, what was it? 0 attack and 2500 defense. I can never remember, I apologize. But while it's face up on the field, if you activate a continuous trap that summons itself to this monster zone, then you can target one monster your opponent controls and destroy it. Which that's not once per turn, so have fun. And then next, I also play one copy of Embodiment of Apophis. This can only be activated during the main phase, but summons itself as an Earth Reptile with 1600 attack and 1800 defense. That's it. And then I play two copies of Apophis the Serpent. I'm only playing 2 copies instead of 3 because this is usually the Apophis trap you'll set off of Treasures of the Kings. But it does the same thing as Embodiment of Apophis, but it also then lets you set another Apophis trap from your deck that can activate that turn. And then when it goes to the graveyard, you can add an Embodiment of Apophis from your deck to your hand. I believe there's also a... Yeah, you can only use each effect of Apophis the Serpent once per turn. And then next, I play 3 copies of the stupidest Apophis trap, which is Apophis the Swamp Deity. Apophis the Swamp Deity just has the effect that during your main phase, you can special summon it as a level 6 reptile earth monster that has 2000 attack and 2200 defense. However, it also has the additional effect of when it's activated, you can then you negate cards in your opponent's field up to the number of other continuous traps or monsters that you control as possible, or up to that. So if you have Apophis, the Serpent in play, then you activate this, then you can negate one card your opponent controls non-targeting, which I absolutely love. That's non-targeting. And then lastly for the traps is my favorite trap in the deck, which is 3 copies of Verdict of Anubis. Verdict of Anubis has the effect that your opponent activates a spell or trap card, or the effect of a spell or trap, you can negate that card. Then if you have Temple of the Kings in play, you can then destroy all monsters your opponent controls, and then inflict damage to your opponent equal to their combined original attack, or half their combined original attack. And you can only activate 1 Verdict per turn. But this is my favorite because it's a burn card, and then it's a negation that also burns, I should say. Now then, for the hand traps, I play 3 copies of Effect Veiler. This just, you can send it from your hand to the graveyard during your opponent's main phase to target a monster they control and negate its effects. Then I play 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Ash just can be used once per turn to negate any card your opponent uses that summons from deck, sends from deck to grave, or adds from deck to hand. Then I play 3 copies of Molcharmi Perulia. Perulia has the effect that you can... I believe... Yeah. All of the Molcharmis share the effect that you can only use their effects while you control no cards, but if you don't, then you can discard it. I believe it has to go to the graveyard. Nope. Then you can just discard it to then apply the following effects. Where Perulia will make it so that every time your opponent summons from hand, whether it's normal or special summon, you can draw 1 card. And then during the end phase, if you have more than 6 cards in your hand, you randomly shuffle cards from your hand back into the deck until the number of your cards in your hand is the number of cards your opponent controls plus 6. And then the next one also has that effect, which is 3 copies of Molcharmi Fualos. And then Fualos does the exact same thing as Perulia, but instead of drawing one of your opponent's ones from hand, Flawless lets you draw every time your opponent summons from deck or extra deck. And then you can only use 2 Moltres effects per turn. Forgot to mention that part. And then next, I play 3 copies of Nibiru. Nibiru with the Primal Being can just be activated when your opponent summons 5 or more monsters in a turn. Where you can then activate it in hand to tribute all monsters on the field, and if you do, summon itself to your field, and your opponent gets a token with the combined original attack and defense of the tributed monsters. And then lastly, with the hand traps, I play 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Infinite Impermanence, I personally feel like, is the best hand trap in the deck, just because of the fact that Anubis the Last Judge can recycle it. But Imperm can activate from your hand if you control no cards. But it lets you target one effect monster your opponent controls, negates effects. And then if this card was set when you activate it, it then negates all spells and traps in its column. So, if you activate this on your turn, be careful. Because I've actually won games because I did not pay attention to a column that was in on my turn. But that's it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, which not much has changed with the extra deck, and I'll go over what cards I do plan on changing. But starting off with the monsters, I play 1 copy of IP Masquerena. IP Masquerena just lets you link summon on your opponent's during your opponent's main phase by using this card you control. Then a link monster that was link summoned using this card as material can't be destroyed by card effect. Then I play 1 copy of Silhouette Rabbit. Silhouette Rabbit has the effect that when it's summoned, you can take a continuous trap from your deck that summons itself as a monster and set it face down in your spell and trap zone. And then, once per turn, if you activate a trap if you summon a trap to your monster zone from your spell and trap zone, I believe that's how it's actually worded, then Silhouette Rabbit will let you target 1 spell or trap your opponent controls and destroy it. And then monsters can't be destroyed in battles involving Silhouette Rabbit, including itself. Then next, I play 1 copy of SP Little Knight. SP Little Knight has the effect that when it's link summoned using a Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link monster, then you can target 1 card your opponent, or 1 card on the field or the graveyard and banish it. However, if you use that effect, you cannot attack directly that turn. And then SP Little Knight also has the effect that if your opponent activates a card or effect, then you can activate SP Little Knight's effect in response to banish both itself and 1 other monster on the banish one monster you control and 1 other monster on the field. Usually it's going to be itself, which is why I said that, but it lets you banish a monster from either both sides of the field or 2 monsters on your field. And you can only use each effect of SP Little Knight once per turn. Then I play 1 copy of Nightmare Cerberus, 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix, and 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn. Of these 3, I would probably take out Nightmare Cerberus for a 2nd copy of Silhouette Rabbit, just because since Kashtira is running around, if they're able to use a Unicorn before I'm able to have a turn, then they'll just banish the 1 rabbit, and I'm in a bit of trouble. But all 3 of these have an effect that activates when they're summoned, where you discard a card, target a card on the field, and do something with it, depending on which one it is. Cerberus will let you target a special summon monster in your opponent's main monster zone to destroy. Phoenix will let you target a spell or trap your opponent controls to destroy. And then Unicorn lets you target a card on the field and shuffle it back into the owner's deck. And then if any of these 3 are co-linked when that effect resolves, then you get to draw 1 card. I'm not going to go into their other effects when they're co-linked because you normally have them co-linked in this deck, so why bother? And then next, I also play 1 copy of Axis Code Talker. Axis Code Talker is another card that's probably going to be coming out of the deck, which I will replace with Gallant Granite. Just because Gallant Granite has the effect that once per turn, you can detach material to add a rock monster from your deck to your hand, which in this deck would either be Nibiru or the card I'm not using in the deck until I actually have it in my hands, which is Lord of the Heavenly Prison. As you can reveal Lord of the Heavenly Prison during your opponent's main phase, or during your opponent's turn, I don't remember which one it is, honestly. But you reveal it, and then while it's revealed, your set spells and traps can't be destroyed by opponent's card effects. And then you can also summon it to your field and then you can set a normal trap from your deck to your field. Which, with that and Silhouette Rabbit, then you can technically do a funny thing where you can set Quantum Cat or Swamp Mirror to your field, and then on your opponent's turn you can summon them as a Wind-Winged Beast, and then Heavenly Prison will just let you set Harpy's Featherstorm from deck. Then I play one copy of Cypher Lord Omega. This is only in here as an Ultimate Slayer target for Synchro, as it can use its effect in graveyard to put itself and another card in your grave back into the deck. And then next, I play 3 copies of Divine Serpent Apophis. Divine Serpent Apophis has the effect that it has to either be fusion summoned or special summoned by attributing 2 Apophis monsters you control. And then once per turn you can activate its effect so that you can have you can target up to 3 different Apophis traps in your graveyard, which I believe at the moment there's only 3. There might be a 4th and I just can't remember it. But you can target up to 3 Apophis traps in your grave, set them to your field, and then once per turn, if a trap card is activated, which I found out against Malice, that includes your opponent activating a trap. It doesn't have to be your trap that activates. Then you can target 1 card on the field and destroy it. Or I think it's 1 card, it might be 1 monster. You target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it. And then, lastly, for fusions, I play 1 copy of Divine Scorpion Beast of Circuit. Divine Scorpion Beast of Circuit has the effect that when it's special summoned, or your opponent... Let's see, what was it? Or at the start of the damage step, this card battles an opponent's monster. That's what it was. So when it's summoned, or when it battles at the start of the damage step, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, or in the graveyard, banish it, and if you do, it gains half the original attack of that banished monster. And then it can attack twice as long as there's a level 10 or higher monster that is banished. And I want to say it also has some other effect I don't remember. Nope. It just gets 2 attacks during each battle phase while there's a level 10 or higher monster banished. And when it battles or when it's summoned, it can target 1 monster on the field or in the graveyard, banish it, and gain half its original attack. And then lastly, for the XEs, I play 1 copy Gaga Cowboy. This is just in here for time, as in defense mode, you can detach material to inflict 800 damage to your opponent. 1 copy of Baguska, as in case you have a bad hand, then the least you can do is try to stall by having this in defense, switching all their monsters in defense, and then the activated effects of the monsters in defense mode have their effects negated. And then lastly, I play 1 copy of Super Star Slayer Typhon Sky Crisis. Sky Crisis can be summoned using the monster on your field to the highest attack, as long as your opponent has summoned from the extra deck at least 2 times in the last turn. But while it's on the field, I can't remember if it's monsters or just your opponent's monsters. Okay, no. And then while it's on the field, neither player can activate the effects of monsters that have 3,000 or more attack. And then once per turn, you can detach a material. I don't remember if that's a quick effect. Let's see, is that a quick effect? It is not. Once per turn, you can detach a material from it, then return 1 monster on the field back to the hand. So, honestly, I don't know how I feel about this, as I didn't even summon it once. What I might do is just replace this with an aggregator for another Ultimate Slayer target. But that's it for the extra deck. Now for the side deck. The side deck ultimately can be whatever you want, but at my locals, this just works best for me. Which is 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. During your opponent's main phase, if they add a card from their deck to their hand, then on the resolution, you can discard this card to make it so that until the end of the turn, neither player, I believe. Let's see for the rest of this turn. Okay, yeah. For the rest of the turn, neither player can add cards from the deck to their hand. Or from the main deck to the hand, I should say. And then next I play 3 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit has the effect that you can send this card from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard. When your opponent activates the effect of a monster on their field, or the effect of a spell or trap card that was already face-up, to then destroy that card. And you can only use that effect to Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit once per turn. And if I remember correctly, I'm actually kind of surprised. Droll and Lockbird is not a once per turn thing, so if your opponent negates a 1, they search again later. You can technically do a second Droll and Lockbird. But that hardly ever happens, so no need to worry about it. Next, I play 2 copies of Lightning Storm and 1 Heartbeast Feather Duster. This is just for the mirror match. Although if I really want to plan for the mirror match, then instead of these, I should be playing 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. As long as the Man with the Mark is in play, then... Or as long as the Man with the Mark and Temple of the Kings is in play, then Apophis Traps and the Man with the Mark, as well as Temple of the Kings, cannot be destroyed. Though these can still destroy sets of other traps. And then next is 3 copies of Ultimate Slayer. This just lets you send a card from your extra deck, Ritual, Fusion, Synchro XYZ, to then send 1 card of the corresponding type, or you shuffle it back into the deck. I always think it sends to the grave, but it doesn't. And then your opponent can activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. And then lastly for my side deck is 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier. This is just for going first, and then when you activate it, you declare either Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, XYZ, or Pendulum. Neither player can summon that type of monster or activate that type of monster's effects till the end of the turn. And that is it for my Tomb Keeper deck profile. If you've been hearing a fan in the background, I apologize. It's honestly really warm here, and I was needing to cool off a bit. But if you have any ideas what you can do to improve the deck, any ideas for decks like to see me made in the future, or decks like to see face each other, one of my friends is currently working on a Joey deck to fight this with, so I'll upload that once I have it recorded. But if you have any ideas, comment below. I always read the comments. If you're still here, thank you for watching.